I'm Josh Ellingson here with Monster Energy Star Racing Yamaha, and I'm the mechanic for Eli Tomac. Starting at the front of the bike, we'll start here with the front brake for Eli Tomac. He runs a arc folding lever that Arc Bob builds that gives you a different ratio change. Line-wise, we run a core front brake line, which is a steel braided line, an arc folding clutch lever, and the arc perch setup. Pretty neutral, a little bit low position. Grips-wise, he runs a Pro Taper full waffle. Throttle tube, aluminum G2 throttle tube. Bar-wise, he runs SX Race Pro Taper bars that are in a neutral position with the forks, with neck and bar clamps +5 riser, neck and triple clamps. For our button starter and kill switch, we run a protective guard that keeps his chest from knocking the button off or breaking the button. It's just a safety precaution and keeps him from hitting the kill switch. It's almost like an extended housing that allows the button to stay safe. Right now we're just have one start map as to what he wants, and he just engages it himself on the line. So for fork wise with Eli, we run the LSF A-kit setup that's more of a hybrid that he chose for Supercross. KYB, Gilly at KYB built those. So works connection, launch control button. He runs it a lot deeper for the grate to keep the front end down so he's not wheeling. It's a one button setup. Pretty much tested the depth at the test track, and this is where we found it works the best right now. So for outdoors, he'll run the button up just a little more just because you do get a little slip because of the dirt. It's not as grippy compared to the grate. So for front rim, we run a kite hub with Excel rim, and then the spokes we use are kite as well, and we wire tie them at the cross point in case we have one pop. It doesn't wrap itself in the fork or take out the brake line. It just keeps it in its place in case one does break. A Dunlop 768 front tire. He runs a braking front rotor, and then caliper wise, Nissan billet caliper and hanger with a braking front rotor. We run a light speed cover over it to keep it any rock or even person from bending it out of the track. 270 front rotor. So for airbox setup, we do run a hole in the hood scoop that allows a little more airflow into the airbox itself. And then for airbox setup, we use the Twin Air Power Flow kit that comes with a cage, back plate, and the filter itself. Lightspeed does our skid plate. We have it rigid mounted. We haven't done too much testing with the rubber mounted skid plates, but right now it shows no effect for us on this chassis. For radiators on the bike, we run a 1.8 cap that allows the pop point to be a little higher, and then we run a Twin Air louver skin that keeps rock and debris out of the fins of the radiators. And then on the back side, we run a brace that runs left to right that keeps the radiators from smashing in either from his legs or another rider or a tip over to allow him to finish the race. And then we run Oetiker clamps on all the hoses to keep a hose from popping off, or just makes it a little stronger. For engine wise, it's done in-house by our engine guy, Kalma. And power wise, he likes just a smooth power curve, not a super hard hitting bike. And since he's been on the Yamaha, he really hasn't had too much feedback or complaints on the power that we've given him. So engine wise, we really haven't tested a whole lot. Stator cover wise, with the GYTR cover, it's a little stronger to keep any rocks from puncturing a hole that would lose oil and cause a failure. And that's sold to the public as well. Shifter wise is running the stock neutral position, stock length. That is a production part that you can buy off the shelf. On the engine, we run a clutch arm guard that keeps any rocks or mud packing up in there that would hinder the arm from moving back and forth, which if it did get packed up in there, it would push the arm out and hold the clutch on. Engine hangers are all production. So for pivot, we run a MetTech tie pivot and rear axle with aluminum nuts made in-house at Yamaha. So for the pivot, we run a Delram plug on the left and right side. On the left sides to keep any debris going into the pivot, and then on the right side is to keep debris out of the pivot hole that could lock up the rear brake if it got stuck in there. Grip tape on the frame is what Eli prefers, just to keep a little bit more grip on the frame when he's either hitting loops or in the middle of a rhythm. We don't run any grip tape on the numbers. It's all Eli's preference on where he wants it. Foot peg setup for Eli is a Raptor titanium peg with an added middle teeth channel through the middle in case when he gets on his toes through the whoops, it gives him a little extra grip. Titanium foot peg mounts that are made in-house at Yamaha with METTEG foot peg pins. His foot peg setup is a back 10. Gearing wise, we run a 1350 with RK chain, rivet length RK chain, Vortex front and rear sprockets. For Eli's shock, he runs KYB shock setup. It's factory body. For preference wise, he runs more of a stiffer rear shock to keep more hold and put more pressure on the front to keep the bike turning quicker. For Supercross, Eli went with a standard pull rod and standard knuckle. For chain guide, Lightspeed builds us a carbon chain guide. It's pretty much standard dimensions, saving weight from the aluminum chain guide that comes with the bike. For wheelbase, we run with gearing setup. We run a longer wheelbase off the back, more of a stability going down straights, and improves the handling and shock movement and the front end. Sprocket bolts, METTEG provides us with titanium sprocket bolts and rotor bolts for the rear wheel. In the back, same as the front, Excel rear rim with kite hub, and then Yamaha rear spokes and Dunlop rear tire. Axle blocks are made in-house at Yamaha. The tie axle, also the nut on the rear is in-house. It's an aluminum nut made in-house at Yamaha. Rear brake is a standard caliper with an OW master cylinder that gets rid of the window in case possibly have a window that falls out and cause a DNF, so get rid of that. And then brake pedal for the rear brake, we install a tie tip on it that gives him more foot feel when he's using the rear brake. And then we run a stop at the bottom of the rear brake that keeps the rear brake if hits any debris in a rut or a corner so it doesn't pull the internals out of the master cylinder. And then on the rear brake line, we remove the sheeting towards the front that connects to the master just as a weight saving. Subframe setup for Eli is a standard height subframe, or we don't drop it at all for him. He likes the height of the rear end. For exhaust system, FMF provides us with header and mid pipe, and then we install a guard on the canister that keeps either from another bike or from Eli kicking in the pipe and denting, just keeps it all intact throughout the race. For Eli's engine package, we run a Recluse clutch setup, which is their standard torque drive. He runs a neutral spring setup, not too stiff, not too soft. People say he's a heavy clutcher, but on this bike, he's actually been really good on the clutch. Clutch setup is back to a cable pull system over his Cowie, which was hydraulic. So we had a extra start button just below the shroud in case in a crash the start button on the handlebar gets broke off. He's still able to restart the bike. On his rear brake setup for the brake pedal, we added a brake snake that keeps the pedal from bending out in case it gets caught in a rut or on a hay bale. He's still able to use his brake for the rest of the moto. Seat-wise on the bike, Eli runs a standard foam with a 6-ribbed Decor seat cover, and he likes his seats at least one day at the practice track ridden, so they're a little bit broken, so he's not hopping on and it's a super stiff seat. And then graphics-wise, Decor does all the graphics on the Yamaha, and one of the major things that he's picky on is just the play in his throttle and making sure it has a smooth feel every time he's on the bike. For battery rise on the bike, we run an anti-gravity 4-cell battery that's a little bit lighter than the production battery, and longevity-wise, it lasts a lot longer.